Good morning. Our scripture reading today is from Romans chapter 14, starting in verse 13. Paul says, "Therefore let us stop passing judgment on one another. Instead, make up your mind not to put any stumbling block or obstacle in the way of a brother or sister. I'm convinced, being fully persuaded in the Lord Jesus Christ, that nothing is unclean in itself. But if anyone regards something as unclean, then for that person it is unclean. If your brother or sister is distressed because of what you eat, you're no longer acting in love. Do not, by your eating, destroy someone for whom Christ died. Therefore, do not let what you know that is good to be spoken of as evil." Skipping down to verse 21, Paul says, "It's better not to eat meat or drink wine or do anything else that will cause your brother or sister to fall. So whatever you believe about these things, keep between yourself and God." So it's good to see you today. Glad you could be with us. I think all the cornfield dust finally got to my throat. I had this like tickle in my throat. I don't have a fever. I don't have any of these other signs, but boy, I wake up in the morning, there's like all this gunk stuck in my throat. Welcome to Nebraska, right? And I've noticed driving back and forth to Plattsmouth that, you see the big clouds of dust of the plows going through, and well, okay, I guess that's it. So, whatever you're dealing with your family, whatever you're dealing with your health, I'm glad that you're with us, and I just want to say in passing that regardless of whether you agree or disagree with the way the presidential election turned out, and this is not my topic this morning, I'm not going to talk about it anymore for a while, but regardless of how you feel about it, remember that we as Christians believe this world is not our home. And I have definite beliefs and I have definite convictions about what I think should happen in our world, politically and other ways. But let's be clear, we're not here for here. And there is a God in heaven and we're not it. And whether you agree or disagree, God has dealt with people making mistakes in elections before, and He's dealt with people making corrections in elections before. Christianity works beautifully in communist China and in communist Russia and in illogical India and other places. Christianity will not hang, the success of Christianity in your life will not depend on politics. It really doesn't matter who's in Washington. It doesn't matter what party they're part of. As far as your relationship with God goes, it could very well matter in your income. It could very well matter in your tax level. I'm greatly distressed by the trends I see in our country where everybody from old to young are starting to get this idea of this gimme, 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 I want what I want and I want somebody else to pay for it. The ancient historical word for that is socialism. And the problem with socialism is sooner or later they run out of other people's money and they come and get your money too. Now, that's what I believe, and I think I've seen that in history. I think I've seen that as I travel the world. But it doesn't change the fact that whether we live under a socialist system or not, we serve a God in heaven who is greater than that system. And our confidence is not in how the election went. It's not how the next election goes. And you may agree, you may disagree. It doesn't matter because the King of Kings and Lord of Lords is still the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And our allegiance is to Him, not to some political party. And that's all I'm going to say about that this morning. But I wanted to say that we're talking. We've been talking the past several weeks about the one another way and how that in the Bible, especially in the New Testament, there's all these places where the Bible tells us how we're to treat one another. And this morning we're looking. This week and next week we're looking at. Like all these miscellaneous ones that didn't really fit on a topic. Like there's one of the biggest, huge topics is the topic of love one another. And you find that over and over and over and over again. Give preference to one another. Treat each other well. Those are some of the big ones. This week and next week we'll look at some of the things that are they're more miscellaneous, that don't quite fit under a big umbrella, and yet they still fit under the umbrella of how we're supposed to treat each other. How about looking at this first one here? Ray, you got to put my pointer back over, man. There you go. Come on, you can do it. There it is. The first one we find is the Bible teaches us don't judge one another and don't put stumbling blocks in front of each other. Now let's talk about this for just a minute. I want to go back and look at the passage that was. Why is this not working? What does this mean? I don't know. I can't quite see through that glass back there. They're trying to tell me something. Look back at Romans chapter 14 for just a minute. We'll forget the slide for now. I don't know what they're waving their arms about. Hold it on this side? It worked last week over here. Hey. Okay. I stand corrected. Romans chapter 14. This is a passage that many people with many kinds of ideas have misused in many, many, many different ways. And I just want us to take a look at the passage. The passage is one of those. Paul does many of these passages that are made in the form of what I call a sandwich. He will give us his main point, he'll end with his main point, and then he'll put the meat and cheese and lettuce and tomatoes and pickles between the two pieces of bread, and you've got a sandwich, right? And so what you find in verse 13 is one piece of the bread says, therefore let us stop passing judgment on one another, instead make up your mind not to put a stumbling block in the way of a brother or sister. And then you look down to verse 22, the other piece of the bread is, whatever you believe about these things, keep between yourself and God. There are things in life that are not a matter of salvation, they are a matter of preference and personal belief. Those things are formed by our experiences personally, by the way we were raised, by the culture we live in. And they're not the things that say you get this right or you're lost. They're the things that you say you get this right or people around you aren't going to be very happy with you. You get this right or your mama's going to be disappointed. You get this right or grandma's going to pinch your ear. But his grandma may not pinch his ear for not getting that one right. There's a whole bunch of those kind of things in the world of Christian. And the only way Christians can survive in the family of God, as different as we all are, different races, different levels of income, different ages, different education, all different kinds of differences, the only way we can survive is if we allow each other a certain degree of freedom in those areas. And there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of them. Paul uses the example from his day, the eating of meat offered to idols. Paul, as a Jew, says, I'm convinced that an idol is nothing, and anything you give to an idol doesn't matter because it's nothing. And you give me a piece of meat that's been offered to an idol, and I'll make a hamburger or a steak out of it. I have no problem. But to someone who's a new Christian that's come from pagan worship, where part of the pagan worship is you share a meal in the presence of their, quote, God, little g God, and you offer that meat to the little g God. In their mind, when you share with that meat that's been given to that little g God, you are worshiping that God. You're not just having a cookout. You're not just having a hamburger. You're not just having a family festival. You're having a religious experience in their minds. And Paul says, I don't believe any of that for a minute. I don't believe any of that for a minute. The gods are nothing, and the worship of the gods are nothing, and the offering thing. But for that person, it is something. So what do? Well, Paul uses a thing called hyperbole here, and he says, if I find that eating meat or anything else, I'll quit eating forever. Well, you can't quit eating. You're going to die. What's your point, Paul? Paul's point is taking care of each other is more important than making myself comfortable. And it doesn't matter whether you're on the eating of the meat side or the not eating of the meat side. Both sides should lean towards making the other one less awkward feeling. But at the same time, either one shouldn't look at the other one and say, well, if you decide differently than me, we're still friends. We can still be brothers. We can still talk to each other. It's not my job to pass judgment on you. It's not your job to pass judgment on me. Now, where there's a very plain, thus saith the Lord, there's one Lord, there's one faith, there's one baptism. There's one God who's over all and through all and in all. Then there's no debate among you. You either agree with me or you don't agree with me about that. And if we don't agree about that, we're just not going to agree and we're not going to get along very well. But what about all these other kind of things? What about all these other kind of things? Gary led a song this morning. And Tammy and I had to laugh at each other because we've been other places where when they sing that song, they clap in certain places. But you guys don't clap. And so the song goes like this. You are the words and the music. You are the song that I sing. You are the melody. You are the harmony. Praise to the Lord I will sing. So we're sitting there, and it got to each one of those parts, and we both looked at each other and go, if Gary had wanted to clap in that song, he's the song leader. We're supposed to follow the leader. We're supposed to do things decently and in order, and he's the designated leader, not the preacher and his wife, and so we go. Is it okay to clap? Yeah. Is it okay not to clap? Sure. Sure. But you see, it becomes a problem when, for example, we visited a church in Corpus Christi not too long ago. Not too long. It's been, a year ago now? 2 years? 5 years. Yikes. I'm getting old. This is a big church of several hundred people that had always had a big youth group. And we get there, and there's no teenagers. And there's very few children. And I said, what's the problem? They said, oh, we're sorry you had to get here this day, but last Sunday there was a problem. So what was the problem? So, well, we had some kids that came back from camp, and they wanted the kids to participate in church, so they sang a couple of songs from the camp, and the kids sang the songs the way they did at camp, and they clapped where they did at camp, and some of the older people who were the best givers complained. And at the end of the service, one of the elders stood up and said, listen, you can clap at camp, but you can't clap here. And all the families with kids, instead of staying and causing trouble with their kids clapping when they shouldn't clap, they all went to another church that allowed clapping. Now just think about that for a minute. What if the older, wiser people had listened to the teaching of Paul? What if the older, wiser people had said, I don't like that clapping stuff. It's not the way I did them. I don't. But I kind of like having kids around, and I'm hoping this church will be here after I'm dead and gone so that the money I've given to it isn't just wasted, and hope that what I believe will go on past me. I hope that things I believe in will go past my death, and so I'm not going to clap, but you go ahead if you want to. Go ahead, clap. See how much more healthy that'd be? That's the point of this one another passage. The point of this one another passage is there's all these kinds of things where what you want or what you don't want may or may not interface very well with people who are weaker and younger and not as strong a Christian as you are. And the burden is on those of us who have been Christians longer to give. Not our money, but our minds and our words and our attitudes. Not where it says there's one Lord, one faith, and one baptism, but in all these other kind of areas that, well, do we have pews or padded chairs? Do we use microphones with wires or no wires? Do we make the church building brown and white or blue and white? If there's somebody in your church, and I can't imagine it being this way, but if there's somebody in your church that's really a spiritual issue for them, and that's the second point about this you got to think about. Not only have people misused this by saying, look, you can't, if I don't like something, you can't do it. Paul says you can't do it. It makes me uncomfortable, so you can't do it. That's not what it says. In fact, he's saying the exact opposite. It doesn't matter whether it makes you uncomfortable or not. It has nothing to do with whether I can do it or not. I should choose not to make you uncomfortable. But if you're older and wiser and more mature than me, you're the one that's supposed to be making that choice quicker than me. Oh, no, I want it my way. Now you're proving you're not older, mature, and more wise. See the point? Say, well, I've been around here forever. Okay. I know how it's supposed to go. Do you? The Bible says we're supposed to stop passing judgment on one another. So does the Bible say anything wrong? Is there anything wrong with clapping in a song? Give me book, chapter, and verse, will you? We claim to be people of the book. The cry from the Restoration Movement was, where the Bible speaks, we speak. Where it's silent, we silent. In matters of faith, unity. In matters of opinion, freedom. We forget some of those things now that we've gotten further away from the things that our ancestors thought were important. We've kind of changed some things. Some of those changes have been good, but some of them have not. Some have not. So what's the point here? The point is we're to care more about each other than the others. But here's the problem that church leaders have. Do you keep one cranky person happy and let 150 other people say, I want nothing to do with that, and they go elsewhere? The church in Corpus Christi, that eldership made that decision. We want 3 or 4 of our older members to stay happy more than we want 150 of families with young people to keep coming to church here. Now, as elders, that's a valid decision. Elders have to make those kind of decisions. I would hope that you would see the flaw in that, though. I hope that you would see, as older and wiser people who understand more about life, that the car's going in the wrong direction. Anything wrong with it? No. Anything wrong with having a church that's only old folks with no babies? Sure, it's okay. One of the things that surprised me years ago was as I was studying the faith of the Quakers. So the Quakers were some of the first people that came to this country for religious freedom. Do you know you got to be single to be a Quaker? Do you know you can't have sex if you're a Quaker? Do you know you can't have kids if you're a Quaker? Unless you come to the faith after already having the kids. So take a guess what has happened with the Quaker faith and their numbers. Because, hello, people die. You're going to die. I'm going to die. Sooner or later, we're going to die. Is it okay to not have kids? Sure. Can you choose not to have children? Yes. But an older, wiser person is going to scratch their head and say, there's something wrong with that direction. A family that doesn't have any kids and grandkids, that family name is going to die out. Right? So sometimes people have used this verse, for example, I've heard it used where people say, well, we live in a country where there's people that struggle with addiction and with alcoholism, and so, I understand that the Bible says you should drink a little wine for your stomach's sake, and the wise man said, wine makes you happy, but he also says that wine's a mocker and beer's a brawler, and so if you got somebody in your church that thinks that it's wrong to have a beer once in a while with a hamburger, then nobody in the church can have one ever. It's not what this verse is saying. I've heard people say that. What's this verse saying? Look at verse 22. Whatever you believe about these things, keep between yourself and God. Don't divide the church because you want things the way you want them to be. Don't allow others to divide the church over things that they want to be a certain way. And if you've got a belief about some of these kind of things, you think it's okay to clap, it's okay to clap. So what do? You keep it to yourself and you go. You don't jump up next to the song leader and say, no, you do it this way. No. Why? Because we're the family of God. If you don't clap, you don't clap. It's okay. We can still be friends. Right? So that's, hey, it worked now. Don't judge one another. Don't put stumbling blocks in front of another. The point is, if all of us look out for the other, instead of having one person look out for you, you've got 100 people looking out for you. Guess where you're going to get looked out for better? But what if they don't do it? So what? So you don't get your way one day. So maybe an election comes along and the wrong guy you think gets put in, or gal. Will the sun come up tomorrow? Yeah, I talked about this Wednesday. A friend of mine put up a post and he says, he said, regardless who wins tomorrow, if Trump wins tomorrow, I've got plans. What's his name? Biden wins tomorrow, I've got plans. Guess what? The plans are the same. Plans are the same. There's a lot of those kind of things, and generally speaking, the things that split churches and split families are not the big, huge things, they're the little things. Husbands and wives don't argue about which doctor to take a kid that's bleeding. They just put them in the car and they go. But let somebody take the toilet paper roll and put it on backwards, or leave the cap off the toothpaste. And man, you got World War III. Who did that? How come? See, it's those kind of little things, and we need to be careful about those things. Don't judge one another. Don't put stumbling blocks in front of another. Speaking of husbands and wives, here's another one of those miscellaneous one another things. Husbands and wives don't deprive one another of physical intimacy. You wouldn't think about the Bible talking about these kind of things. Here's what Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 7. He says, the wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband. What? It goes both ways. In the same way, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but yields it to his wife. Do not deprive each other except perhaps by mutual consent for a time, so that you can devote yourselves to prayer. Then come together again so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. Now listen, there's lots of things you use your body for that have nothing to do with going to bed together. But that's part of it. That's part of it. And one of the problems that young couples have, and even maybe older couples, is that one partner or the other one likes sex more than the other. And I was talking to a young couple a few years ago where that was kind of the case. He wanted to go to bed more often than she did. And he came up to me with this verse. He said, you need to talk to my wife. I said, yeah, probably. But this talks to you too. And he says, what do you mean? I said, he said, I'm ready to go to bed right now. I said, it doesn't say go to bed when the other one wants to. It says using the body the way the other wants to. I said, when was the last time your wife asked you to carry the groceries in from the car and you sat there and watched the ball game instead? Oh, come on, preacher. When was the last time your wife wanted some help with something around the house and you wanted to go play golf instead? Come on, preacher. It's the point. The point is, when we are married, especially if we're married to a brother or sister in Christ, part of the contract of being in marriage is that we're no longer two, but we're one flesh. We're supposed to agree about direction. We're supposed to agree about things. We're supposed to double team life. We're supposed to take the rules of the game and play to win. Does that include sex? Yes. It includes other things you do with your body too. So one of the problems that young couples have sometimes is he doesn't understand why she's not ready to go to bed with him when he didn't mow the grass, he didn't carry in the groceries, he didn't help wash the dishes, he didn't help take care of the kids. he didn't use his body to serve her, and now he's wanting her to use her body to serve him. And she says, it just doesn't seem fair to me. It just doesn't seem right to me. And it's not. So how do you fix that? Well, I'm going to withhold using my body until they use theirs to suit me. No, it doesn't work that way. In Christianity, we've got to be people who learn to give. What do you mean, preacher? What was the example of God? While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Did Christ say, okay, you clean your act up and I'll let you into my family? No. He says, you come into my family and then I'll help you clean up your act. The side of the giving, the side of the doing, the side of the bending, the side of the giving in, being taken advantage of, that's the role of a Christian. I don't like that very well. I don't either. I don't know anybody that does. But it's part of the deal. It's part of the deal. How about this next one? Don't lie to one another. We need to speak the truth to each other. This is the third kind of a miscellaneous one. Paul says in Colossians chapter 3, verse 9, do not lie to each other, since you have taken off your old self with its practices and have put on the new self, which is being renewed in the knowledge of the image of the Creator. Don't lie to each other. Now, the reason that's such an important thing may not have dawned on you unless you ever had to deal with somebody that lies. I've had people in my life, I've had people in my family that you could not trust a word they said. If they told you the sun was shining, you should go outside and look and see before you believed the sun was shining. And I'm talking about people that I loved and that should have loved me, but you couldn't trust them. You couldn't believe them. You couldn't work with them on anything because you never knew for sure what they were saying, whether it was true or not. In fact, most of the time it was not true. Most of the time they had an angle. They had an axe to grind, an agenda of some kind, that they wanted what they wanted the way they wanted it. So if they said it in a certain way that made somebody look bad, didn't matter to them if it was true or not. It was helping them get what they wanted. What's the problem with that? The problem with that is you can't have a body, you can't have a family if there's no communication. And if you can't depend on that communication. When the second day after my open heart surgery, I opened my eyes one morning and I looked over at the nurse that was standing there and I said, are there supposed to be two of you? And she looked at me and said, no. I said, all of a sudden I see two of you. And I got to where there were words that I wanted to say that I couldn't say. The fancy word for that is aphasia. I'd had a stroke, and so they stuck my head in one of these MRI machines, and I actually have proof, y'all. I have proof, photographic proof that I have a brain. Here's the bad news. It's got some black spots in it where they weren't supposed to be. They're small, but they're in some of the memory areas and some of the speech areas and some other areas. And so for a while, I was seeing double, and I couldn't read, I couldn't walk, I couldn't do anything because I was all... Say, Rick, why are you telling us about this? Because that's the physical body equivalent of lying. My eyes were lying to my body through the way my brain functioned. See? My eyes were seeing a certain thing. It passed through the faulty part of my brain, and the faulty part of my brain was lying to the rest of my body. And so I had trouble with my balance, and I couldn't read, and I couldn't understand, and I couldn't depend anything. It was all because I was being lied to by my central nervous system. That's what happens in the body of Christ. The reason the Bible is so insistent that we tell each other the truth, that we be honest with each other, that we be who we are, that we don't lie, and that we don't cheat is because functioning of the body depends on that kind of a communication. Look at this next verse. Therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor. For we are all members of one body. There's the point, right? You can't function in the body if your body's not telling you the truth. And there's dozens and dozens of illustrations of this. The illness called leprosy We know now that leprosy is caused by, it's a disease that attacks the nervous system and it kills the nerve endings. And it's not leprosy that kills you, it's the infections that are caused by the dead nerve endings that lead to infections. And so the reason people in ancient days would lose their fingers and toes if they had leprosy is because they would lose the sensitivity in those fingers and toes, and they wouldn't know they got cut. They wouldn't know they had a problem, and it would get infected and they would never feel it. And by the time they noticed it, it was black and getting ready to fall off. And that was part of the thing with leprosy, was people lost their fingers and toes because of infections. Now we know that the problem is with the communication through the central nervous system. We can treat leprosy today. They didn't used to be able to treat it in ancient times. But that's the problem. The problem is your brain tells your body, everything's fine, there's no problem, there's no pain here, move along, citizen, there's nothing to see. Sounds like some of the conversations that we have in churches or our families. How you doing? Fine. You okay? Oh, I'm great. I'm great. How about those Eagles? How about those Cowboys? What about the wind? Isn't this great? When are we going to have our first snow? And we deflect and we don't tell people the truth because we think, well, they don't really want to know the truth, and there's a problem right there, right? We don't know each other well enough to believe that the other people want the truth from us or care enough about us to hear the truth. We live our lives in different directions, and so we think, I better make sure I look good. I am the preacher, you know. I better not let them know that I've got feet of clay. I better not let them know that my breath smells bad sometimes. See how foolish that is? Well, everybody's breath smells bad sometimes. Yeah, I know, but I'm the preacher. So what? Yeah, but I'm the preacher. Now, you may not be the preacher, but you may have your thing, too, that keeps you from, you have like this shell around you. You think if people really knew me, if they really understood me, if they really saw the real me, they wouldn't like me. They'd cast me out. They'd throw me away. Let me tell you something. If they would, they're not the family of God. And you're better off without them. But that's just the way that it is. And it all comes back to this telling of the truth. How about this one? Comfort one another concerning the resurrection. This is the last big one, then we've got a kind of a silly one at the end, and I'm done. Here's what Paul tells the Thessalonians. The Thessalonians were a group of people that they believed that when Jesus said he was coming back, they meant like he was coming back next week. And so a lot of them had quit their jobs, they'd quit paying their bills, they quit feeding their kids, and a lot of them went up to this mountaintop area and just sat waiting for the Lord to come back, because he said he was going to come back. And it says that he went up into the clouds, he's going to come back from the clouds, so let's find the tallest place, we can be the first ones, and we'll sit here and wait for them. And Paul had to talk to these guys and say, there's been a miscommunication here of some kind. There's been a miscommunication here of some kind. And so in verse 16 he says, for the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, with the voice of the archangel, with the trumpet call of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. So it doesn't matter if you are sitting on the top of that mountaintop, the guys in the grave go before you do. So there's no sense for you to sit up here and just twiddle your thumbs. I think you'll get the memo. I think you'll get the message when the graves start coming open and people start going to heaven before the living people do. You don't have to worry about missing it. You don't have to worry about being Johnny on the spot, because if you're alive, you're not going first. It doesn't matter what hilly hop you're on. Now you think, well, why would he tell them that? Verse 17, after that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them. You're not going to get left behind, but you're not going first. If you're alive, you can still live your life. You can still take care of your family. You can still work your jobs. And you're not going to have to worry about missing it, because somebody will tell you, hey, the graveyards are emptying. I saw some bodies come out of the ground. I don't know for sure what I saw, but that looked really strange. It'll be on the news, and it will happen before it's your turn to go. So you can live your life in confidence that you're not going to miss it. And you can also live your life in confidence knowing that at some point it is going to happen. And you can live in confidence knowing that if you die before it happens, you get moved to the front of the line. You're not going to miss anything because you died before Jesus came back. You're going to get moved to the front of the line. Now, why is Paul talking about all these things? He says, we'll all be caught up in the clouds together to meet with the Lord in the air, and so we will be with the Lord forever. Look at verse 18. Therefore, encourage one another with these words. Don't be afraid about dying, and don't be afraid about not dying. Don't be afraid about missing the resurrection. Don't be afraid about taking care of your family and doing all these things you need to do. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. If you're alive when he comes back, it'll be okay. You won't miss it. If you're dead when he comes back, it'll be okay. You won't miss it. Encourage each other with these words. Don't allow each other to become so focused on one aspect of the resurrection that we forget. Some people are so heavenly minded, they're no earthly good. We need to encourage each other to not be that way. You got to live until you die. You got to live your life and do what you do. Even if you think you are going to die tonight, you still need to live today while you're alive. You can't just stop everything and say, okay, Lord, I'm ready. Yeah, you can do that. But it's not the best way to live, and it's not the way to encourage each other, and we shouldn't really worry about that a whole lot. Here's the last one I want you to look at this week. We talked about this a little bit last week. Greet one another with a kiss. Well, that's just what you want to hear in the time of COVID, right? Somebody, I was talking about this one time and had one of my. I know it's hard to imagine an elder being a smart aleck, but I've had some smart aleck elders that sat in my classes. And this one smart aleck elder jumped up and ran to the front of class. He grabbed me in his arms and gave me this big, huge, wet kiss on my forehead. He said, "Who's next?" Well, time out. I don't know why I always get the same kind of friends everywhere I go. But that's not exactly what this is talking about. Let's look at a couple of these verses that talk about this. One's found in Romans 16:16. Romans 16:16 is a favorite verse for people who are in our fellowship, in the churches of Christ, because it mentions our church name. The problem is we've used it, we've made it our church name when that's not what it was meant in this verse, and so we've anyhow, Paul says, greet one another with a holy kiss. All the churches of Christ send greetings. What Paul is saying is, all the churches that belong to Christ send greetings. He's not saying all the people in this denomination send you their greetings. And so there have been people who've kind of gotten that, and so there are people who came along and said, okay, we got our name, Churches of Christ, from the Bible, but we've used it in a denominational, sectarian way. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that first C is not a capitalized C. And since it's not a capitalized C, now we're saying that we're a church that belongs to Christ. We're not a Church of Christ, a denomination. And yet nobody on the planet uses English that way, and at least not in churches. And so we say what we're saying, but nobody gets it that way. And we wonder, why do people constantly call us a denomination? We're not a denomination. We're a New Testament speak where the Bible speaks church. Well, here's one of the places that we've not quite got that right. You say, well, Rick, what are you saying? I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that you can take this verse and say every other name for a church is the wrong name, when the truth is there's dozens of names in the Bible for the people of God. They're called disciples of Christ. They're called Christians. They're called believers. There's dozens of those kind of names. And so you could theoretically take any of those, give it a capital letter, and say that's the name of our church, and say I've got a biblical name for my church. That's what Churches of Christ did with this one. Anything wrong with that? No. Just so you know, that's not what Paul's doing here. Paul's not saying the only Christians in the world are Church of Christ people, because there are other Christians in other places in the Bible that have other names. But then he says this thing here, greet one another with a holy kiss. You find another couple of verses of that. Here's 1 Corinthians 16, you see the same thing. Brothers and sisters, here send you greeting. Greet one another with a holy kiss. Here's another one, 2 Corinthians 13. All God's people send their greetings. Verse 12, greet one another with a holy kiss. What's the point? The point is not the kiss, the point is the word holy. You don't have to be going around kissing on everybody to be okay with this verse, but if you're going to kiss somebody, it needs to be a holy kiss. You see the difference? We've talked about this before, where that guy, that David Koresh, that with the Branch Davidians in Waco, Texas, he claimed to be the modern-day incarnation of the Son of God. And if you joined his compound and you were a married man, you had to give him your wife. You couldn't sleep with her anymore, and your wife became his. And he had a harem, right? He had a harem. And part of worshiping him as the new Son of God was for your wife to go to bed with him. It's the wrong kind of kissing. Are you with me? And people in the first century had the same kinds of problems with sexual sin that we do. And listen, here's one of the greatest problems that you can have in the churches. For example, Gary and I were talking about this the other day. Just like there's some women that are attracted to a man in uniform, there's some women that are attracted to a church leader. The same kind of psychology, the same kind of thing that goes on. Anything wrong with that? No. Nothing wrong with the attraction as long as you don't act wrong on it. What if one of those women wants to kiss you? Okay, make sure it's a holy kiss. Make sure my wife knows. Make sure it's something that can be done in the presence of all, not something to be hidden in a closet somewhere. The point is not the kiss, the point is the holy. So in our culture, we don't kiss in greetings like they do in Europe or in other kinds of places. But there are things we do that need to be holy as well. One of the things we do in our culture is we joke around with each other. We play practical jokes. We give pranks. We'll tell stories. We'll tell funny stories. So what kind of stories should you tell? Should you tell a dirty story that gets a laugh? Or should you tell a holy story? What does the word holy mean? Holy doesn't mean heavenly and ethereal. It just means set aside or wholesome. Should you be a person that tells jokes? Yes, as long as your jokes, or maybe yeah, maybe we should say as long as they're funny, and as long as they're wholesome. There's things that I laugh at that I'm ashamed that I laughed at. I look around, did anybody see me laugh at that? That's not how we should greet each other. We should greet each other in a wholesome way. We shouldn't greet each other by looking each other up and down. How are you dressed today? What are you showing? See the difference? The point with these all is we should greet each other. However we greet each other, it's not the kiss that is the important thing. It's do we greet each other in holy, wholesome ways? And so one of the ways that we need to greet each other in a holy, wholesome way is by being friendly and encouraging to people. You know? You should make it your goal, whether you're at church or at a restaurant or at work, your goal should be that at the end of every interaction with another person, that they feel uplifted and built up, that their day is now better because of you, because of your words, and because of your actions. And that's the idea of the holy kiss. It's the idea of a holy kiss. We could talk about holy kisses and other kinds of kisses another time, but the Bible does say, greet one another with a holy kiss. Don't just be slobbering on your preacher's forehead, even if it is a joke. I don't want it. So what's the point, preacher? The point is that we're to live in a one another way. Being a Christian is not about you. It's not about what you want. It's not about what makes you happy. Say, but I thought Jesus said he wanted us to have life and life abundantly. He does, but the abundant life is not a selfish life that looks out for me, 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 me. The abundant life comes from having dozens and dozens of other people looking out for you while you're looking out for them. So I'm going to listen to prayer about this morning. If you need to respond in a public way, you can. If you're not a Christian, we'd love to study with you. I'd love to help you. We've got numerous people that can. All you got to do is ask me. If we can't meet on my time, I'll hook you up with somebody that you can get that with. But right now I'm going to assume that we all need to pray about this, and then Gary will lead us in another song. Father, we're grateful that you've given us directions how to live together. And Father, we're thankful that when we do things your way, it provides peace and safety and tranquility for all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds. And Father, I ask that you help us to remember that the church is yours, not ours. That the money we give on Sunday becomes your money, and the time that we give you when we become a Christian is now your time. And that the day we become a Christian, we become yours. Everything that's ours is yours. May we be good stewards. May we represent you well. May we treat each other as your representatives, even when we disagree and don't see things the same way. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.